Welcome to another episode of Switch Movies with me, Knight, and obviously Ashley, the movie Oracle.
Hola.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
I am ready to go off today
Mhm.
because we're doing some interesting movies, talking about fantasy. Um, I
Epic
chose
fantasy to be specific.
Good point. Good point.
Mm.
Epic fantasy. And for today, I chose a movie that's very near and dear to my heart since I was a
Before
little
before
kid.
you before you reveal what that movie is, tell me because for anybody wondering, I didn't pick today's theme. That was not me. So if you end up hating it, blame him.
Oh,
Shooting blame, shooting blame. Uh, why did you pick this topic as today's theme? Because
well,
I gotta say, you're quite the pro at picking themes. Like I gotta top my hat, top tip, top,
tip, tip top shape.
whatever word I'm looking for here. I doff
Yeah.
my cap to you,
Okay.
on your theme picking abilities.
Well, I don't know. I just thought to myself, this would be a good theme to kind of tackle. For me on my channel, and obviously I know we're big horror folks, so it's always fun to kind of go outside of that realm.
Mm,
And obviously, we both love tons of other movies and all other genres.
mm.
So I just thought that it'd be fun to just talk about something that's like really on the other side of the spectrum, talking about epic fantasy, because not many people, at least, in my small circle, of YouTube friends and so forth, not a lot of people talk a lot about epic fantasy, and it's just an interesting genre that I've always appreciated since I was a kid.
It's a great genre. I think one of the beautiful
Hmm.
things about this particular genre is that it's one where you can combine so many different elements from so many other genres. You can go dark and have monsters and scary things that you'd find in a horror film. You can have
Right.
comedy, you can have romance, you can have action.
Hmm.
It's pretty much this really great amalgamation of genres that you can just like, it's just like someone's like, oh, we're doing a fantasy, oh, we're gonna do some crazy shit today, which
Yeah, I
I
mean,
love.
this the sky's the limit, and the other cool part about it too is that a lot of these types of movies, they'll have roots in history or
Mhm.
common mythology, and especially things that for me in my childhood were kind of familiar. So it was all good. It was all good, and plus I just wanted to see what you'd say. That was the big part about it too. I just wanted to see what you were gonna say. I was like,
what
man.
what is Wayne is like, is she gonna be like, yeah, woohoo, or is she gonna be like, fuck you, this is a stupid idea?
Well, I knew you'd be open-minded if nothing else. So
That I am. No, fantasy in general is definitely one of my favorite genres. I mean, I've finished writing the first draft of my first script, which probably I will never do anything with, but it's a story in a world that's been in my head for all these years. And it's a
nice.
fantasy. It's a fantasy genre. There's mythology, there's magic, there's all this shit because that's kind of where what I gravitate to. Horror may be my
Hmm.
favorite genre, but if I had
Hmm.
to sit down and write a horror film, I got nothing.
Right.
I can
Yeah,
criticize them all day long, but I can't
I hear you.
I'm a
Yeah, no, I know
hypocrite.
exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Like horror is definitely the genre I delve into the most as far as watching and rewatching and stuff like that. But you know, I love a good comedy. I love I love martial arts films and
Yes.
and 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 stuff like that. And I really enjoy. And maybe this will be. I know I'm jumping ahead, but maybe this will be a good one for down the road for another episode. But I
Mm.
also love movies that deal. I wouldn't necessarily say adventure, but movies that take place in nature, where it's either man versus nature or man versus the elements. I love those types of movies. So quick plug.
That's Interesting. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like what are some films like
Uh,
that?
yeah, Vertical Limit, The Edge, The Gray, The Ghost in the Darkness. I mean, there's tons and tons. I can't even. Alive.
So we're kind
And
of
so
going
forth and
into
so
like
forth.
survival, almost survival type films,
Yeah,
man versus the elements.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, someone forced to cut off a limb to save themselves.
Maybe, maybe. Unless you're really smart and you figure out another way.
Uh, okay, what about open water?
I like you just throw that out there.
Two people versus the element of the ocean.
Right.
And
Yeah.
potentially some things that are in the ocean.
Yes. Good
What do
point.
you do then? But yes,
Exactly.
today is epic fantasy, and I feel pretty good about the choices that we have because they're very on point.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna have to edit out the part where I'm trying to think because I just forgot what I was gonna say.
They were
There,
good choices.
there were words. I was thinking them. I was going to say them. I do not know where they went.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I was just I'm happy with our choices. I give up.
Well, I could say that I was pretty happy with the choices. But okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel good because and we'll get to it when we get to my pick because we're starting off with Knights, but I feel great about my pick regardless of what he feels about it because he had sworn his brother he was not going to watch this film. And he watched this film because I made him. And that makes me feel good because I swore myself I'd never watch Under the Skin. And I did. So we call it an even now. So anyway,
There you go.
I remember what I was going to say.
I thought that these were good picks for a little bit of a different reason. But no, but part of it too, kind of like what you said, is obviously watching some things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone or out of the realm of things that you normally would choose to watch. But the other thing too, and this almost sounds weird to say it, but when you talk about epic fantasy movies, obviously they're fantasies, but these two movies, at least in my opinion, are kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as how fantastical they are, I guess I would say. Like you've got one that is, really going out there with some things. And then you've got the other one that's a little bit more rooted in, I don't know if I want to say realism or, I mean, obviously it's still fantasy, but, you'll get what we mean when we talk
Could
about these,
almost
I'm sure.
describe it as one has a lack of special effects and one has an abundance of special
Yes, yes,
effects.
yes, yes.
But yeah, let's get into your lovely pick for moi.
Well, my pick. This is a movie that, again, I've enjoyed this movie since I was a kid. Um, it's I love tales that speak about the Arthurian legend, and to me, this is one of the best depictions of it on film. So I chose Excalibur, directed by John Borman in 1981. Fantastic film, and like I said, this was a movie that I've enjoyed so much over the years. I remember when I first watched this movie, it was with me and my brother and my four cousins, and we were sitting in the living room of my aunt's house. We got little bags of popcorn and chips, and we're just watching this epic fantasy that really, it just really struck a chord in me when I was a young kid, and even to this day. I still enjoy it. I've got a big poster of it in my room. You can't see that poster. You see these, but I have a big poster of Excalibur in here as well because I just love the movie. So
Nice.
yeah.
I like that. That's one thing that you and I have in common. I feel like when we've talked about the films that we have chosen and kind of why we have chosen them, one of the things we both have in common is we have an emotion or a memory that is attached to these films. You know,
Yeah.
yours are very much centered around, this is something that I watch bonding with my family. So yours are all very
Yeah.
family oriented, and I think that's great. And
Mhm.
mine are same, minus the family part. Uh,
Mhm.
but you know, films that we have grown up with and formed these attachments with, because you know they're kind of part of our informative years, and so they help mold and shape who we have become. So,
Yes.
I through this have now learned a little bit more about you. You're into Arthurian legends. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, man. I'm telling you, it just. Whew, I don't want to geek out too much about it, but
Geek
seriously,
out,
I
geek
just
out.
and it's funny, and this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but I know sometimes we'll do that. Uh, I appreciate the legend so much, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, but obviously coming from the horror side, there was this trailer. It was kind of like a teaser trailer for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3,
Mhm.
which it isn't the greatest movie of all time. It's also not as bad as a lot of people say. But anyways, they had this teaser trailer of Leatherface standing at a waterfront, and it's got all this like really cool, moody type of music, and it's talking about you thought it was over, but some things never end. Blah blah blah. Anyways, all of a sudden, out of the water comes the chainsaw, coming up out of the water like Excalibur. Okay. And you
Oh
see this hand,
no.
the lady of the lake, and the chainsaw flips in the air. You hear the sound
Uh,
effects. Wolf, wolf, wolf. It goes into Leatherface's hand, and and I was like, "That's the coolest trailer I've ever seen," and not because it was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre trailer, but because it was playing off of Excalibur and the Arthurian legend. So yeah, I really love movies and things dealing with it, and yeah, this is this is to me this film. It's one of the best depictions. If it is the best in my opinion, it is.
Still getting
You
over Arthurian legend meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm trying to.
you've got to see it. You got to
I'm
promise
gonna have to.
me.
I'm gonna have to Google it after this and look it up on YouTube.
Yes,
That is redonkulous.
yes,
Just when I think there can't be crazier things in this world, life
yes,
surprises me.
and a lot of people liked it because of the play that it had. But yeah, look it up, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, man.
Damn, wow. Um, I no, 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 no.
What?
I would rather watch Scarface again than watch this again.
Come on!
I
Jeez!
don't even feel bad because I was messaging my friend while I was trying to finish watching it. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever seen this film? By the way, I'm talking about Movie Talk with Dan Jensen, who's the awesome guy who does the thumbnails for these episodes because he's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
he is.
I'm like, have you ever seen that? And he's like, yeah, I saw it when I was 8 years old when my parents took me to see it at the movie. And I remember being
Oh
bored
wow.
shitless. He's like, that memory has
Mm.
stayed with me to the point that anytime I've considered rewatching it, I remember that and go, no, I'm not doing it.
Oh jeez.
And I just like,
Oh man.
I don't blame you
Okay.
because I am a fan of the Arthurian legend. I love Excalibur. I always kind of really like the character of the lady in the lake. I always liked her.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
why.
me
I
too.
just like, oh, I'm like, you're cool. I like you. Can we be friends?
Right.
And I got to admit to the point that even though I did not love this film, the
Mhm.
rare time she pops up, I'm like, hey, it's her. I like her. Hi. I actually thought her costume was quite nice, even though we only really
Yeah.
mostly see the wrist of her. But it was a really nice wrist.
Right.
I appreciated that wrist. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but, for me, my favorite adaptation of the Legend of King Arthur is actually the Merlin TV series from 1998 that had
Yeah.
Sam Neill
Sam
playing
Neill.
Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I grew up with, and so that's the one
Yeah.
that has always stayed with me, and that's like my reference point for everything.
Mhm.
Arthurian. Obviously, I've seen other things, but that one was for you it was Excalibur. For me, it was
Mhm.
Merlin. But I think that's also
Yep.
just kind of indicative of what was kind of there when we were growing up.
Right.
It's not a lot of the time with things like this, as someone who loves mythology and culture and folklore, and these are things that I've personally spent most of my life studying, for
Mhm.
mostly just for fun because I'm so drawn to it. And
Mhm.
so with any other project, I might be sitting down, I'm like, well, they didn't get that right. I'm like,
Mhm.
that character didn't do that. I'm like, those two
Mhm.
shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that one didn't even exist in this part of the story. And
Right.
that's not something that I was doing with this, it was pretty much like they tried to get in every character that
Yeah.
has ever been mentioned. They're like, we're gonna find a spot for you. We're throwing you
Yes.
in. No man left behind. Uh
That's one way to put it.
and so on one hand, I kind of commend them for
Mhm.
really trying to stick to the legend of King Arthur
Mhm.
and really and I don't think there's ever been maybe with the Merlin TV show, I don't really know, but at least with most adaptations, they do really kind of start at the beginning, which is before Arthur is even born, because you do
Mhm.
really need that part of the story to know of Uther and the fucked up shit he did. So
Right.
it's I don't think I feel like there's the purpose of that is kind of see that personality behavior is not innately inherited, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
Arthur is such a polar opposite of his father. He's quite compassionate. He's about
Right.
unifying people and being good. So it's that difference of, sins of my father is such a thing that plays into a lot of things. And I think you have that moment, at least in this film, where people maybe were a bit apprehensive because he's Uther's son. And
Right.
then there are the other people who are just like, he's not a knight. We ain't following this shit.
Right. Right. Right.
But yeah, you kind of need that part of the story to give context to Arthur, because Arthur even existing is a thing in itself. There is
Yes.
you can't just have him exist,
Right.
because then you're just like,
And it sets them up really well, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's just I think for me my biggest problem is, while I commend them for having all the details of the legend, it I didn't feel like it was moving through the story in a good way. I didn't like the flow. It felt
Hmm.
more like ticking off boxes on a checklist. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
we got to
Yeah.
include this and then this and then this, and it felt like we're just going from one moment to the next, and that there's not
Hmm.
really a flow to them where it feels like a real telling of a story. And
Hmm.
I think that's a theme that also happens with a lot of depictions of the legend of King Arthur, where it's like we're being told a story. And I've always kind of liked that approach because it is a story, and so it kind of makes it feel more fantastical if you go that way, whereas this one really was almost to sometimes it was almost like I was watching Braveheart with with the fight scenes. I was just like,
Come on.
with the battle, I don't know. I felt bad for all those horses. I really did. I mean,
Right.
those poor horsies. I was just like, man, they got it rough in this film. I'm like, if Peter was, I don't know when Peter was founded, but if Peter was around in 1981, they'd be like, no, we are protesting this film. Um, I think there's a lot of good ideas. I just wasn't really enamored with it. I found the
Mhm.
music to be a bit out of sorts. It didn't really feel like it matched the film at times. And then there was sometimes music being played. I'm like, man, you didn't even like write something. You just took something that already existed and threw it over the top. Like, that lazy. You lazy. But the costumes were, I would describe them as gaudy. They were very gaudy.
Yes, I could see that. Absolutely.
Like, because
Yeah.
I'm at
Yeah.
points where I'm just like, it's dinner time, and why is everybody still in their armor? Like, you
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
you're literally just established there's no war going on right now. That peace is among the land. So why y'all still wearing your armor 24? Like, do you sleep in that? Do you go to bed in that and wake up in that? Because they were like never not wearing their armor. I'm like, damn, that just looks really
well,
uncomfortable. And it was the
yeah.
shiniest armor I've ever seen.
That
Like,
was the
could
cool part.
totally
Come
blind
on.
you.
Yeah, I know. It well, I think too, we have to think about the time period that it came out in. And I think that, you're talking about 81, so you're talking about, late 70s, early 80s. And I think, costuming and even how things were kind of, like you said, gaudy and so forth. I think that was kind of a sign of the times, for a lot of movies. I mean, you think about Clash of the Titans and, stuff like that. And I think that there's a lot of through lines, be it for, good or bad. But that being said, I think that this, to me, anyways, this movie, it just seemed like it tried, like you said, it had a lot of things it was throwing into the movie because the movie's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Um, but you're like, I could not get through it. But no, but I mean, it had a really tall task, and I think that, well, and we're going to get to your pick, but I think that when you talk about these types of movies,
Mhm.
this movie seemed to try to take the material seriously. It seemed to try to be respectful to it, and in the time that it was created or made or filmed or whatever, 1981, I think that it tried to utilize the best of its time, as far as how they did, some of the effects and practical things and the fighting and the battle and costuming and so forth. So that's how I look at it.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. I mean, I commend any film that tries to go more with practical effects versus using any type of computer, which I still could have done. We did
Yeah.
still have some at the time, but
Yeah.
it was just for me that, if I was comparing it to, and I'm not saying this because it's behind him, but if I was comparing it to like The Thing, where that's something which even today, and this is coming from someone who's not that big a fan of it, but you watch it and you look at the practical effects and you're like, that is insane. How did they do
Hmm.
that? And you're like, oh no, there's got to be some kind of computer thing done. It's like, no, that was entirely real. And you're just like,
Right.
but how?
Right.
How? Like,
Yeah.
it's done so well,
Yeah.
you can't believe that it's real.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
amazing. Whereas with
Hmm.
this, there were moments where I wasn't being sold, like
Hmm.
Arthur getting impaled. Very clearly the spear was on the outside of his body and they just did the side technique, and I'm like,
Yep.
I like that happened. Or
Yeah.
Morgan Le Fay and the smoke coming out of her mouth. I'm like, well, there very clearly is like a tube to the side doing that. Like,
Yeah.
there were just
Yeah.
some things that I thought were very
Yeah.
obvious, but I commend them for taking that route, because I imagine with some of those things like the dragon's breath and all that, if they had tried to go more computer, um, it would have looked weird.
Yeah. It would have. Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
think they chose the better of the two options. So it looked better than it would have if they went with a different option. But it was little things like that. And yeah, 80s fashion. I don't have a problem with 80s costuming in certain films. Yeah, it's a little on the tacky side.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I think I can compare it to like Legend, which came out in 1985. And
Hmm.
yes, if I think back to Tom Cruise's gold armor thing in that one, yeah, that's a bit gaudy. but
Yeah.
somehow the execution in that for me just kind of worked with the film a bit more, and this one
Yeah.
sometimes the costumes just didn't blend in. Like
Yeah.
when we got to Mordred's costume, I'm just like, he just looks like a
Mhm.
gold cherub.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, and that's a good point you made too. And I think it can definitely come down to what's the strength of the director. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And
Yeah.
and I think obviously Ridley Scott. I mean, everybody knows whether they love him or hate him, whether they love his movies or hate him.
Mhm.
You know that Ridley's going to get visuals down pretty well because he's such a visual type of director. Whereas John Borman, I think his strength was more in the story, the depth of the story, or trying to get the actors to work in a because Ridley is not great with actors. There's been a lot of people that have talked about how Ridley is just basically saying, hey, let's just do the job and let me make
Say,
sure the camera angles are right and the visuals are looking good. Whereas, I think John Borman is much more, an actor's type of director and working on how the script mirrors what he's trying to do, which in this case was, historical and
mhm.
myth type of stuff. So I think that that's where Excalibur will fall down, in some of the visuals, the effects, or maybe even the costuming. Not to make an excuse, because that's definitely not the case. But just I mean, that's true of any film. A lot of times the strength of the director is how the film is going to come out. So
Oh, totally. I mean, I've said it with certain films when it comes down to someone giving a bad performance, whether it be in a scene
mm,
or in the film itself. And I've said, I'm like, their performance in this film was not good. And sometimes I
right.
look at it and I'm going, I don't 100% think it's your fault. On one hand, it is your
Hmm.
fault because you gave the performance, so that was your choice.
Right.
But on the other
Yeah.
hand, it's like the director's job is to make sure the story is being told properly. And if you're
Yeah.
watching this from the outside, it is your job to, in that moment, call cut and go, I think you can do this. I think you can do this. Push,
Hmm.
pull back. That's what they are there for. And so
Yeah.
if they don't give the direction that's needed,
Hmm.
we end up with something where people take to their reviews to be like, what the fuck was that? I
Yep.
personally think when it comes to like the Star Wars prequels, and everybody was going, Hayden Christensen's a shit actor. I've seen his other films. Hayden Christensen is a really good actor. I
Right.
don't think that any of that was him being a bad actor. He was playing it how it was written. And
Yeah.
so that
Yep.
ultimately comes down to it's the
George
writing that you
Lucas.
don't like, and it's George Lucas not
Hmm.
being a better director.
Exactly.
That's where the fault is, not necessarily with the actor. I mean, you read a script and it's like, how do I interpret this? And then you're just
Hmm.
playing it how you interpret it. And if the people who freaking wrote it or are making it don't turn around and go, no, 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 you're doing that wrong. Well,
Right.
then that's on you. That is on you.
Right. That's true.
So
Very true.
yeah, there's that. I think I would describe the director's style in this as detail oriented,
Hmm.
because now again, I thought it was not uh I didn't like how it was depicted, and I didn't feel that there was really any emotional weight or like a proper journey, and I felt like there was not a lot of great delivery in the performances, but there's a lot to take in that
Yeah.
film, and you can kind of tell that
Hmm.
it's someone who really liked the legend to the point where it's like,
Absolutely.
I don't want to sacrifice any bit of it. I want to put everything in.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be a detriment. Obviously, you have to kind of know when this time's to leave stuff out. It's sad when you have to. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
if you're a fan of any book that's been adapted into a film, we've all had moments where like, damn, I wish they'd kept that. But they
Right.
but they don't, because in films you can't include everything. I mean, I guess you can if you're Zack Snyder and you just make the film 4 or 5 hours long. Which I'm not entirely against. I'm not entirely
Right.
against if it's something that I like. But yeah, there was just there's a lot of details, there's a lot to take in, and I appreciate someone wanting to showcase every part that they feel makes the legend what it is, and being like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to sacrifice this or this or this. I feel that, I relate to it, I understand. Um,
Yeah.
but I just felt like it was lacking, I guess is the word I would describe, because I wouldn't say that I hated it. You know what?
Mhm.
Even though I said I'd rewatch Scarface before I'd watch this, I didn't hate this one. I just
Yeah.
didn't think it was good.
I hear you. I hear it, and it is a lot to take in. It really
I've
is.
said worse things about movies.
Yes, you have. That's
I have.
very true.
No shame. No shame at all.
No shame.
It,
No shame at all.
I mean, even the castle, it seriously, they were on the roof and it looked like the stone was just like blocks wrapped in aluminum foil, but really thinned out.
I know. I know. It was
Five
81.
bucks says that's exactly what it was.
It was 81. Come on.
I
Let it
know.
go. Let
I
it go.
I can't. I'm not Elsa.
Okay. Okay.
But that I think, at least for me, the probably the interesting thing for me is just seeing so many big name actors
Yes.
appear in this, and it's like, okay, damn, y'all were young,
Yep.
and it's I will just say that the next time someone tells me Liam Neeson is a shit actor in all the films that people seem to love to complain about, I will direct them to this film and say, shut up. Because to me, by comparison, all the other films are really good. But I've never hated Liam Neeson. I quite like him. But it's just
Good.
crazy. There's like, I'm like, I didn't expect to see Helen Mirren or Patrick
Yes.
Stewart or just,
Gabriel Byrne.
yeah. I was just like,
Yeah.
what the heck is happening? What?
Right.
I was just really surprised, to the point where,
Yeah.
at the beginning I like saw a face and I'm just like, is that who I think it is?
Yeah.
And then I'm like looking up, and then immediately it's like, oh yeah, this film with Helen Mirren and did it. And I'm like, no. That's no, I'm looking for 1981's Excalibur. Google, you're not with me. It's like, yeah, here you go. I'm like, oh, wow. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Yeah.
don't know why. I just didn't think that they was gonna have those people, which is really stupid logic
Yeah.
because everybody starts somewhere.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Bad brain.
They
I'm sorry.
did.
Yeah, I
Yep.
actually
They
think
sure did.
I think Helen Mirren, obviously, I honestly, I don't think she's aged that much.
No. Oh my God. I absolutely adore her. Oh my goodness, man. She is just amazing. Oh gosh. Sorry. She's great. She is amazing.
She is. I mean, obviously she's getting on in years. I think I love Helen Mirren. She's great. And yet somehow I'm just like, you know what? When I think about it, what you only look like maybe 10 years older, but obviously you're actually much older, but you don't.
Right?
I'm like, maybe she really is some Celtic sorceress. She really did use some incantations to give herself eternal beauty. But
Right?
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm starting to think this film was not actually a fantasy, but was actually real life.
They just
See,
turned on the cameras.
same with Patrick Stewart. I saw him and I'm just like,
Yes.
I could swear that maybe this was filmed a few years ago based on how you look.
Yeah.
Just looking, and
Yeah.
again, Liam Neeson, I'm like, what the fuck? Did
I
none of
know,
you
man.
age? I'm like,
Right?
y'all drank from the eternal spring. That's what happened. It happened. Like, I know the expression is black don't crack, but goddamn, these are some white people who have avoided aging, and
They figured a way.
yeah, you know what I'm gonna call it? I'm gonna say money. It was money.
Well, could be, you know.
I mean, maybe they've had some work done. I'm not judging.
You never know. You never know. You never know.
Either way, I'd say my favorite thing about this film was the lady in the lake.
Hey, at least you had something that was a favorite thing. That's all that counts. And who knows?
You know what? I like that. I liked that kind of green shifty effect thing they did on Excalibur because it made it look more interesting.
Yes. Didn't it? Oh my gosh. Ugh, you're talking my language. You're talking my language.
You know, there is sometimes I look at something and I'm like, ugh, and then I'm just like, you know what? That's a really nice effect. I like it. I like it because it made it look magical, you know, without like casting rainbows or anything.
Every time I think of Excalibur, the sword, that's what I think of.
The green?
Yeah, just the way that it was depicted in the movie with that green effect. And I'm just like, oh, you know, so.
I wonder if anybody, you know, so many people go and make prop replicas and stuff, and I don't know if it was how it was made or if it was, you know, actually a special effect that they did to it. But I mean, because you can do something if you just get something that's kind of like a chrome, then that naturally has a green undertone to it. If you get in the right light, it's gonna shift. So like if somebody has gone and done that, please let me know because I want to see it. And if nobody has, someone go and do that right now.
That would be cool. Absolutely.
I mean, actually, come to think of it, the sword, the design of the hilt looked very much like the same one in Charmed.
Ooh, the connection is there.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm wondering if like I need to like put pictures of them like side by side because they do look very much alike. So I don't know if maybe Charmed was inspired by. I mean, there was a whole episode with it. I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe that's going to be the one episode you do watch. But the whole episode was based on Arthurian legend, where
I don't remember that.
It's in season 6, and Piper's son is basically the new King Arthur.
Oh, okay.
And so he does have Excalibur, and Piper is basically the new lady in the lake, which is why she's able to wield Excalibur. She can touch it because she's basically meant to, because she's his mom, yeah, that's his mom. But he can wield it, and then it does end up in a rock. And there was the lady of the lake. She was there. They're always wearing white. They're always wearing white. What's up with that? I'm serious. I'm thinking Excalibur, Charmed. Every lady of the lake was wearing white.
Hey, you know, some things just don't change.
I mean, I know she lives in water, but I'm sure she likes some variety.
What is she gonna do? Go to the grocery store or something? I'm pretty sure she's all set right there.
To feel pretty in the water, okay?
She feels pretty. She's the lady of the lake.
Yeah, well, you know what? Tides change. What new waters come in? Maybe she's just like, you know, I've been wearing this outfit for the past century. A change might be nice.
Okay.
She's just a woman. I'm just speaking from a woman's perspective, you know. Sometimes you just get tired of the same old thing and be like, maybe I want to try purple today.
Okay, well, yeah.
I mean, I don't actually know if she can leave the lake to get a new outfit. I don't know where the fuck I'm going with this.
Where you going with it either?
This is a random shit coming out of my mouth today. I'm sorry I'm sorry to Night. I'm sorry to anybody listening or watching. Like, what the
But
fuck?
see, the movie has got you thinking on different levels. That's a success. That's a success. And you're welcome. You're welcome. And your seat is saved for you on the bus.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna watch this one again. No offense.
As far as you know.
Unless somebody wants to pay me. Unless I'm invited onto a podcast and someone wants to be like, we're gonna talk about Excalibur. You have to rewatch, and I'm like, damn it. And then of course I will. Son of a bitch.
I haven't done an episode on Excalibur yet, and you know I like to get guests on. So
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I'm bringing her on so she can complain about it. I mean, this. But yeah, I think everybody will. I don't think this is one where I could say to anybody like, this is a terrible film, don't watch it, because
Mm,
for me, I think almost everything about it is bad quality. That I think the dialogue is utterly atrocious. But that's me. Like sometimes I was just sitting there, I'm like, what the fuck are these people saying? This is so ridiculous. But
mm.
I think it's also one of those things where I think there are a lot of people like yourself who would be very drawn to it and it's very up their alley. So this is 100%, I mean, with most films, but I think this is definitely 100% comes down to taste. What are you into? What are your preferences? And
Yeah, I think so.
if you're not one of those people who can't see things from the time they were made,
Yeah,
if you're not
yeah,
one of those people, you are so not going to like this film.
yeah. I could definitely see that.
Yeah,
Agreed.
what would you give it out of the five? One, two, three, four, five.
Oof. For me, um, and again, I just love the film so much. I'd give it a 4.5.
Oh, so wow, it's up there with Scarface. It's
It is. It really
wow.
is. I love this movie. I truly love this movie.
I don't blame you. I feel like as soon as you said I've got the poster of Excalibur on my wall, I'm like, yeah, that means you love it.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't
It's
I don't
true.
blame you.
Yeah.
How many times would you say that you've probably watched this in your lifetime?
Oh my God. Jeez. It's hard to give it a number, but if
In-
I was if I was if I was
Infinite.
just to if I was just to give it a stab, I know it's easily been over 50 times over all the years. Easily.
If I
Because
had
I've
a
got it,
dollar.
I've got it on obviously physical media. I've got it streaming. As a kid, I had it on VHS.
Where is it
And
streaming?
it's on Vudu.
I've never even
You
heard
can,
of that.
yeah, you can get it on Vudu.
I've never heard of voodoo. I mean, outside
Oh,
of the actual ritualistic practices of voodoo.
and we're not talking about that. But no, Vudu is a streaming
That's another
service where
episode. That's another episode.
yeah, you can get movies. You can get movies that are streamable. You buy them. Like if you go to Walmart and if you buy a Blu-ray, a lot of times it'll have a digital code, and the digital code you can redeem through Vudu. So yeah. Anyways, though,
We're just
but
like, I got my movie off voodoo.
but
I
yeah,
performed this. I performed some ritualistic magic, and I got my movie. It was faster than getting it
jeez.
from Amazon.
But like you can buy a movie on Amazon Prime, or you can buy a movie on I'm getting having a blank, but it's the same idea as
Yeah,
having Amazon Prime. Yeah, yeah,
I feel you.
yeah,
I feel you.
yeah. But I've watched it a lot. I've watched it a lot.
I can say that. As soon as anybody says something like, like when you hear it in someone's voice, like how much a film means to them, they watch that shit religiously.
Mhm.
I can name quite a few films I'd understand. Yeah,
Right?
I would. I'd probably give this a 0.5.
Come on. You didn't even give Scarface a low number like that. Jeez,
I
come
don't even
on.
remember what I gave Scarface, but I did say I'd rather watch Scarface again than watch this. I just, I took a lot of, even if I didn't like Scarface, I could
Hmm.
understand a lot of the meaning that was there, whether I liked it or not. I got it.
Yeah,
I got that story of the American dream. I got the story
yeah.
about immigrants, and I got the story about, freaking life in the drug trade. I get it.
And falling
Watching
to
this,
excess.
yeah, watching this, I know this legend. I've seen so many depictions of it, and for me,
Hmm.
it does not remotely stand out from all the others I've seen, and there wasn't really anything memorable in it to me. And so yeah, 0.5, sorry.
And it's funny because
Mhm.
obviously we're doing this now. I wish I had known that you were such a fan of the Merlin TV show, which was good, by the way, and I liked it too. But I guarantee you that they got inspiration from this movie. I guarantee you.
The Merlin miniseries or the Merlin TV show? Because I haven't seen the Merlin TV show.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's on my watch list
well,
though.
the mini series, the one
Yeah.
with Sam Neill.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I bet you they did.
Yeah,
I bet you they did.
it's funny how it's not until I'm watching some of these that I get reminded just how much fucked up shit is in that freaking legend. I'm like, yeah, we got sexual
True enough.
assault, we got
Yes, I know.
incest. I'm like,
Yeah,
someone explain to me what it is about mythology and folklore from around the world where they feel compelled to have incest. Why?
I know. I think it's because it's taboo. I think it's
It's
because it's
stupid.
taboo. Well,
It's
that too.
stupid. It's stupid.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
I love it. It's just like, yeah, we write incest into all our legends, but then we go and make laws, and it's like, no, 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 no incest. That's bad. It's like, but literally every story you tells us to basically says incest is okay. It's like you're giving us mixed signals.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not encouraging incest for the. I am not.
Neither am I. Neither am I.
I'm just pointing out some hypocrisy. That is all. Because
Right.
mythology, folklore, legends, parables, all this stuff is meant to be teaching us lessons about the world and good versus evil and all this stuff. And because there's so much incest, I'm like, what are you trying to tell me here? What
Right.
what message am I getting other than you should totally have sex with your sister and then have children and then have children with your children? I'm like,
Mm, mm, mm.
speaking of incest,
Oh, jeez.
there's my segue. There's my
Mm.
pick. Now there's technically no incest in my film, but
Right.
the characters of which the film is based on, there's a lot of incest there. Um, because mythology.
Mythology, yeah, right.
You want to thank God that's not something that I adhere to, because creating my own mythology, thank God it's not step one. Incestuous characters must have. Ugh.
Right.
So my
Right.
pick for night was 2016's Gods of Egypt, which was directed by Alex Proyas and written by Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless, and has a wider range of eclectic actors who appear this, and was filmed in my own country of Australia.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, this one this one did not really do well amongst critics. Even the director is not a fan of his own film. That's never a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a controversy at the time of filming because people were talking about whitewashing. I have conflicting thoughts on that.
Mm. Interesting.
Because trust me, I'm usually the first one to be like, no, when you're touching other people's culture, don't touch it if you're white.
Right.
Unless you're a white person and it's your culture. You get what I'm saying. Um,
Yes.
but so this one did not do well with other people.
Mhm.
I watched it and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I love mythology, and Egyptian mythology is at the top of the list for me. It was the
Mhm.
first thing I ever fell in love with. So kind of seeing a film take that and kind of do something so fantastical with it, I was like, I'm in. I'm down
Right.
for it. And then I enjoyed it, and I was looking around. I'm like, damn, I have nobody to talk about it with because nobody likes it. And then I introduced it to my mom, and my mom enjoyed it. And I'm just like, haha, I got one.
Wow. All right.
So for those who don't know, it's basically the film portrays the Egyptian god Horus, who partners with a mortal Egyptian thief on a quest to rescue his love to save the world from Set. Um so we have a lot of Egyptian gods in it. It's all fictional. I mean, duh.
Right.
I'm not implying the ancient Egyptian gods were real. I think all legends come from somewhere, but
Right.
I I don't think there was a half man, half bird roaming around the earth
Exactly.
anywhere. I don't think that's true. So
Right.
this is taking the concept of kind of Egyptian legends, which when you look at it's that the gods kind of lived among man, and so they were deities, and they worshiped them as such and had offerings and all this stuff, and it really kind of, we're talking, it's depicting ancient Egypt, like full on ancient Egypt back when it was still kind of this beautiful oasis, and all those things speak so deeply to my soul. But I'm gonna hold off on my love of it so I can brace myself, whatever it is that Knight's about to say.
Well, look. All right. So look, man.
Be gentle.
Let's get down. Let's as I always say on my channel, let's get down to brass tacks.
He's leaning in now. I'm worried.
Look, there's a reason why I haven't watched this movie.
I can
Okay,
take it. I can take it.
now, okay, to be fair, I agree with you. When I'm watching things about Egyptian mythology and so forth, that's one of my favorites too.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, interestingly enough, with my brother, that's his top. And he actually went to see this in the theater. He called me when
Oh,
he got out of the theater,
oh no.
and he just went on a rant. I mean, he just got he went off, and he was like, because I told you I'd tell you this story, and he basically just told me, some of the things he thought about it. He liked he obviously liked the idea of watching a movie talking about Egyptian mythology, and obviously some of the fantastical elements were interesting. It had good actors in it, although, like you mentioned, the whole idea of the whitewashing scandal and so forth, that was kind of
Mm-hmm.
another thing kind of going on. We'll get to that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the CGI was, yeah, the CGI was just something. I mean, it's funny because we just talked about Jupiter Ascending
Mm-hmm.
previously, and we talked about how some of that CGI just really took you out of that movie, even though that particular movie was trying to really build a world mythology and was doing a fairly decent job of it.
Mm-hmm.
With this movie, I think that it took me out of it quite a bit, but I will say this: it's not a horrible movie. It is not a horrible movie. It's not a movie I'm going to watch again, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the actors. I'm a big fan of Gerard Butler, and I really think that he's a great lead in movies like this, any type of action movies and stuff like that. Although in this movie, it seemed like he was leaning into a lot of like Leonidas from 300, you know,
I can
and
see that.
and it was like, come on, man. I mean, like, seriously. And I don't know. Again, sometimes an actor makes choices, and sometimes it's a director, and sometimes it's the script. So I'm not really sure exactly where that came from. But that was taking me out of it right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the dialogue was a little, and you've got the whole story of what was his name, Beck, trying to uh, obviously resurrect his girl, his love,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, all right. I mean, I don't know, man, and I'm usually not. And I'm pretty open-minded. So if I have an opinion about a movie before I've even seen it, and I'm choosing to watch it on my own, or maybe it's to do a discussion like this, or even
Mm-hmm.
a review or whatever. I'm open-minded to it. Again, I didn't hate it, but I could definitely see where people had some issues with it, story-wise or dialogue-wise. The action was fine in general. The action was fine. The fights were fine. The set design was interesting. But when you talk about the director Alex Pross, who I like him,
Mhm.
and he's directed one of my favorite films of all time, The Crow.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Um,
I just
yeah,
knew. I don't know
yeah, you
anybody
did.
who can. I don't know there are many people who, if they were to say what their favorite film is that he's done and not say The Crow.
Yeah, I mean, The Crow was fantastic. I also liked Dark City. I think he
Mhm.
did a good job with Dark City. He also did I, Robot, which
Mm.
had had moments, but I think, in other words, I think he's a good director. I think he's a visionary director. But it just seemed like with this movie, whereas especially The Crow and Dark City, they had a lot of heart to them,
Mhm.
meaning it wasn't just flash and pizzazz, you know what I mean? Whereas this movie, it felt like it was just a lot of flash and pizzazz and no heart to it. And even though I agree with what you're saying about Excalibur, as far as the depth of character wasn't that great, but I think the thing that Excalibur had was it just seemed like it had a more it just seemed like it respected its material more. Now I know in this movie this is supposed to be like an alternate version of Egypt,
Mhm.
and it's very fantastical, so I get that. But oh man, some of the dial, and especially and it hurts to say this, but Gerard Butler, especially, like, in some of the scenes, it was just like, oh my god, like when he was in the bedroom scene, and he was like, if and I'm gonna do a horrible impersonation of him, but if if you had the chance, you would kill me, wouldn't you? And it's like, dude, you're taking me out of this, man.
And the Razzie goes to.
Yeah, yeah, and I like him as an actor. I'm not saying he's the greatest actor of all time, and a lot of people have, opinions that
Mm,
that
mm.
differ, but he does have presence and charisma. I think most people can agree with that, and I just think that in this movie he was miscast. You've got Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who I liked him on Game of Thrones. I've liked him in some of the other things I've seen. I you know I could have taken him or left him in this movie. Again, I think a lot of it is script. A lot of it is script.
Mhm.
And just like we were talking about in Excalibur, you got to look at the director too, which I hate to say that, because I think that Alex Pross is a good director, but in this movie, I think he just missed the mark.
Mhm.
So not a horrible movie, but I didn't necessarily have a great time watching it. I'm not gonna watch it again. I agree with my brother. Thank you, Killian, wherever you are. Um, and I can see why it didn't do well at the box office. I mean, if I want to sit down and eat some popcorn and watch a movie about Egyptian mythology, and just kind of just kick back and just watch things go,
Mhm.
sure, I could put this on, and it's fine. But it's not a movie. It's not a movie I'm gonna revisit. And the other thing that's interesting about it is a lot of the controversy that it was embroiled in, especially with the
Mhm.
whole whitewashing thing,
Mhm.
was the same thing that Exodus, uh, Gods and Kings went through.
Mhm.
I think Exodus came out like a year before this or whatever,
Mhm.
and they went through the same thing. And that movie is almost the same idea. Like, it's got a good look to it,
Mhm.
um, and it's got a lot of flash, but it didn't really have a lot of heart. And this movie falls into the same thing. And it's funny because if I think about other movies of its ilk, when I think of Exodus, I'd rather watch the Ten Commandments than
Mm.
Exodus
Right.
any day, right? And
Mhm.
same thing with this movie. With this movie, it's like I'll watch other movies that depict you know ancient Egypt more so than this. I'd rather watch Stargate than than this movie every day, all day.
I mean, I can't be mad. Stargate's a good film, and
Yes.
was a really fascinating way of approaching Egyptian mythology. of
Yeah.
which I appreciate because that was always something that stuck with. Maybe it was Stargate that started my love of Egyptian mythology.
Ooh.
It might have been.
You're welcome.
But it's, oh God, I'm loving this episode because basically everything we have felt the exact same things about each other's movies. Because
Yes.
you
Yes.
felt this didn't have heart and there was bad dialogue and all this, and that was everything that I was feeling about your film. So
Yes.
like,
Yes.
this is why
That's exactly what this series is all
this is
about.
exactly this is why I love this shit. Oh my God. Oh,
Yes.
it's like a rush. Yeah. Take that, Fast and Furious. This is a better adrenaline rush. Fuck you. I'm so excited. I'll just jet propel myself right into space. There we go.
Right.
I don't need no fucking cars. Yeah, I totally understand, like there are a lot of films when it comes to them depicting certain characters and them going with someone who is not of that race or things like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
equally will go with everybody else and be like, nah, you shouldn't have done that. Like
Mhm.
what what is that name? I every time I try to think of this movie, the fucking name of this film right
Ghost
over
in the
my.
Shell.
No, I wasn't gonna say that because I
Okay.
don't quite agree with that one because the character was a robot, and I don't think robots
Right.
have races. That, and I thought Scarlett Johansson, played an unemotional person perfectly well. I thought that really suited her. Ah,
Ding.
there we go. Um, Freedom Riders. Freedom Riders
Okay.
lead is Hilary Swank,
Yes.
who is not Mexican.
Hmm.
It's based on a real story and a real person. And while some people have gone and looked at the picture and they're like, yeah, Hilary Swank can play that person because the person who she played was white. Maybe so, but the person that she's playing is also a Mexican. So,
Right.
and that kind of is really important when we're talking about an ethnic person who is doing something to educate all these people. She's at their level. She understands,
Hmm.
she can speak to their experiences. Whereas this one decided to basically turn it into the white savior story. And
Yeah.
I can see where a lot of people went, okay, nah, you've kind of ruined it. Where there is,
Hmm.
whereas that it does, if you look at it when you see this is what it was, this is what you've changed it to,
Hmm.
that changes the narrative of how you see it. And this is something that I'm beginning to understand more as I talk about more films, and I especially talk more about these films with people who it speaks to them on a personal level of their own experiences. And then I kind
Yeah.
of see it from their perspective. I'm like, you know what? I mean, it wasn't until a couple years ago that I even knew the white savior thing was a thing.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's just because obviously that's film's fault.
Hmm.
Because you look at that and you're like, oh, that's such a touching story. As a
Yeah.
white person, I don't look at that and see the other side of it of people of color being like, fuck, this is offensive.
Right. Right.
And then of
Yep.
course somebody tells me,
Hmm.
and suddenly it's like flipping the image. I'm like, when you put it that way,
Right.
it's actually pretty fucked up. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh no, I can never enjoy these things ever again. Like, I mean, I can to a degree, but even now I look at them and I cringe. So
Hmm.
if I look at things like Freedom Riders, for example, and I'm just like, originally you look at this prior to ever knowing that the person it was based on was Mexican, and you're just like, it's a story of a woman who obviously loves being a teacher, she loves children, she loves education, nothing wrong with that, any of that, and her kind of listening to them, understanding them, and just want to help. That's how it comes across, that's how you look at it. And
Hmm.
you're just like, well, that's the job of a teacher. Teachers want best for their children, their students. Then you see what the story really was,
Hmm.
and you question why that was changed.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're like, why did you take a story about someone who can relate to these people and their struggles of being ethnic minorities and can kind of be like, I know your experiences, I've maybe lived them too. I understand what problems you face in life, but I've overcome it. I can help you too. That's a
Hmm.
completely different message and far more empowering than I'm a privileged white person and I have never had any problems in my life. Please let me help you.
Right.
which
Right.
is far more condescending. It's lovely if people
Hmm.
want to help, but when you're
Hmm.
changing the narrative,
Yeah.
I can understand why people would be very offended.
Hmm.
So I'm capable of seeing this. I'm not that ignorant. Sometimes.
We all have our moments.
I'm not gonna blow smoke up anyone's ass. I am sometimes ignorant.
Yeah. No, we all are.
And then I try to
And we
fix
all
it.
can be. Yeah.
But with this film, the approach that they went made me not have that many issues with it. Like, I mean, for example, the fact that the mortal thief is like, maybe they could have, had him being played by someone who is ethnic. Maybe that would have
Mhm.
made it feel a little better. I don't. Okay,
Yeah.
let me put it this way. I don't think that the gods had to be Egyptian.
That's what I think it might have been Gerard Butler who had said that.
For
Who
one,
said, yeah.
half the gods that had been depicted are gods that are only human from the neck down.
Hmm.
So I do not know what color skin is under the feathers of a bird.
Right.
I did not shave it to check. I'm just saying. I didn't
All
pluck it.
right.
I didn't pluck it. Be like, is it a black bird? Is it a blue one? Is it a white one? It could have been fucking anything.
Right.
I mean, I still want to question why was it half and half. I'm highly suspicious of this. So I didn't have a problem with the gods, but that also
Yeah.
being said, among the mortals, it
Yeah.
wasn't a cast of all white people. It was
Yeah.
basically an amalgamation of mixed races, and I'm not saying this to justify it and being like, yeah, this is all perfectly okay. At
Yeah.
the start of the film establishes that we are in ancient Egypt times, the gods live among man, and that ancient Egypt the was the center of creation. This is where
Right.
everything came into being. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, well, if I look at it like that, who's to say that they didn't create one of every race in this one location? If you're saying that it was the
Yeah.
center of creation, I'm like, okay, we're just saying
Yeah.
this is it, because it kind of doesn't make it sound like there are other places. And even, I
Right.
mean, because they're going like real old school to the point when we see Earth is flat.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean they're definitely depicting it like that. I think, at least from what I understood of it back when it came out, and obviously rewatching it for this episode, I think the controversy, what you're saying is, and it's interesting because it's
Mhm.
not wrong, but what you're saying is exactly, well, not exactly, but basically what, like, Gerard Butler was saying, Nikolai Costa-Waldau, and also the director Alex. And so in that sense, I don't think there was any ill intent.
Mhm.
And they also, issued apologies, for if it had, um, you know, frustrated people,
Right.
and made them feel a certain way about it. But I think the issue of it was more so that it was a story that obviously depicted Egyptian mythology,
Mhm.
and there wasn't as much representation. I think that
Right.
was more what it was about. Because
Mhm.
even the late great Chadwick Boseman, I mean, rest in peace.
Mhm.
He enjoyed being a part of this, and he took a lot of pride in being able to, you know, depict, an African, person
Mhm.
in the cast. But he also felt a certain way about it too, and he saw how it could really, stir things up. So I think that's where I'm coming from more so, is just that in the story of things,
Mm-hmm.
sure, it could be anybody, any culture, any race, any whatever, as far as how the story is being told, what the story is about when you look at it from within the story and looking out. But as far as a movie production
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity to get more representation from other minorities that could have portrayed some of these characters, and maybe at least a little bit more of the main cast,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think a lot of the controversy came from. And I can totally understand that. I can totally understand that.
Yeah, I think it's still gonna be hard to for anybody, and this is where I can be completely sympathetic, that white Hollywood has a nasty long history of
Yeah.
completely fucking over minorities.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I can understand when, even in such a fantasy land as this, where everything is fictional, and
Right.
even how they incorporate this world of the gods and how they are, whether
Hmm.
I like it or not does not matter. I can
Right.
understand why that's going to be triggering for a lot of people, because it's like, oh, here we go again.
Hmm.
When you past behavior is often, a good indicator of things to come.
Hmm.
And we got some issues. So it's hard. I understand. People are going to be
Yeah.
like, you know what? Why do you keep doing this? And I'm
Hmm.
sure that there were better ways to approach it. I still really ended up liking it. And even though I can look at certain characters and be like, I had no problem with this, I had no problem with this,
Right.
um, I'm completely understanding too sympathetic and sympathetic to anyone who had issues with this. I do not invalidate them. I do think that they are completely valid in having. I
Yeah.
especially think at the very least, at base level, the one thing that they could do is have more ethnic diversity in the crew. And that I guarantee was probably not there. It's
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's like one thing if it's the cast. Somehow I feel like it's worse when you don't even have anybody on the crew. Like it was, I think it was Anthony Mackie who said
Hmm.
that when he kind of came on to Avengers Endgame, not Endgame, but when he came into the MCU, and there was
Hmm.
just a point he's sitting down and he is surrounded by white people, not just in the
Yeah.
cast, but in the crew. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
think maybe he said there was like only one other black
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
And just thinking about that, because this got oddly political. Mythology ended up getting political. How did that happen?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yes,
Who knows?
because I feel when I heard him say that story, it
Mhm.
reminded me of uh 11th grade history class. I was sitting in there, we were studying the civil rights movement,
Mhm.
and yes, we study a lot about American history in our Australian in our Australian schools. We maybe even know a little bit more than some of
You might, you might, because there's definitely some deficiencies in history here over in America.
you. So we were sitting down, and they were talking, and the teacher was really going into the subject of segregation.
Mhm.
And I just had this moment where I kind of was thinking in my head, how would that have looked to see
Mhm.
people having to use different fountains depending on your color, and having to walk on
Mhm.
different sides of the street,
Yeah.
different restrooms, all that kind of stuff. And I just looked
Mhm.
around my classroom, and then I looked at my friend who was sitting next to me, and I just leaned into her and I'm like, um, I just noticed you're the only person of color in this class. And she's like, welcome to my world. And
There you go.
I went,
Yeah.
oh damn. That
Mhm.
so obviously class educated me that day. It did its job
Mhm. Yeah.
because I never, she's my friend. And, I was sitting next to her.
Right.
I'm just like, that's my friend. I talked to her, blah, 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 blah. I don't like her
Yep.
anymore because she's homophobic. So there we go. Um, Hypocrite much. Anyway, um, it was just that moment of just like, holy shit. And I was just thinking, how must she feel every day coming into a classroom and she's the only person of
Mhm.
color sitting in the sea of white? And I'm like, oh, that must be
Right.
hell uncomfortable. And I was
Mhm.
just like, I am so sorry. She's like, you get used to it. I'm like,
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, but that's really fucked up. And she's like, whatever. She's like, but thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
And
I hear you.
I was just so absolutely baffled by that. And so I guess it was kind of nice that eventually she was Dominican. That was her background. And then eventually we had another friend of ours join the class, and she was actually Egyptian. And I guess she felt comfortable around me because she noticed that I have this necklace, which is a cartouche, which is how your name is represented in hieroglyphs. And my brother got
Oh,
this as a
okay.
gift when he was in Egypt. He had it made for me, and I
Mhm.
still love it. It's one of my most treasured possessions. And I guess she didn't know how to be around me. I think somebody had said something nasty about me, school rumors and all that shit. And she took one look at my necklace and she goes, "You have a cartouche?" And I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah." And she says, "I'm Egyptian." I'm like, "Oh,
That's
really?"
cool.
And I'm just like, now I feel awkward. Is this wrong? Is this the wrong shit? I'm like, did I just offend your culture? I'm like, oh shit. Like I started to get
I've been
really
th- I've been through that too, man, because I've actually taken trips down to Chinatown and with my martial arts teacher and students and stuff like that. And I remember once I was walking into a restaurant and the guy, he looked at my tattoo
mm.
and it has Chinese characters and so forth. And he looked at it and he looked at me. He's like, "Oh, okay." I, he knew what it meant. And that was the thought in my head too. Is like, I hope this is right because I had double checked it like a dozen times before I even got the tattoo. I
Am
double
I
checked
gonna
it.
end up a meme
Friend,
where it says like pork crackling
yes,
on my arm?
yes, yes. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I got worried that I
Mhm.
had like by wearing this, I was offending her when I
Yes.
kind of immediately wanted to be like, no, I'm like, no, I love Egyptian mythology. I
Hmm.
adore it so much. And instead it made her really warm towards me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I thought you
Yeah.
hated me. And she was looking at it and she goes, A-S. She's like, oh, it's your name. Like obviously a cartouche's name, but it could have been somebody I care about, a family member, but she realized it was my name. I'm like, yeah, my brother got it made for me in Egypt. She's like, oh, he went to Egypt. Where in Egypt? I'm like, oh, Cairo, this. And I'm like, he rode on a donkey. The donkey shat on everyone. I'm like, it's actually a really good story. Um, but kind of after that, she ended up like being really nice and friendly with me.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, because obviously Egyptian culture and I mean, compared to my other friend who was like speaking Spanish, I'm like, Spanish and Egyptian, which one is less likely to appear? I'm like, somehow she's got it worse. And I'm like, not that it's a competition, but
Right.
I think that kind of just from what I remember, maybe it's wishful thinking, but she seemed to like really relax when she felt like she wasn't gonna have me go and be like, "You're a terrorist," and I'm just like, "No, I
Right.
think you being Egyptian is amazing. Tell me more."
Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
that was fine. So I have a genuine love for all things Egypt, and to this, I like I said, we've had the exact same feelings about each other's films.
Yes.
I respect it. I feel it. I feel that so much. So, like I said, one of the things I appreciated about Excalibur is that it wanted to include so much of the legend and
Yeah.
really be true in its depiction of it. And I gotta say, in terms, while they're not exactly historically accurate to Egyptian mythology, they
Right.
had the gods and what their roles were pretty much accurate. Although
Yeah. They had a good
Horus is
inspiration
not
of it.
the grandson of Ra. That's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, Ra is indeed the god of creation and like
Hmm.
bringing the sun every day. So that part entirely uh on 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 point. Isis and Osiris, husband and wife. Yep. Even how
Hmm.
they incorporated the legend of Osiris being chopped into pieces by his brother. That in the legend too. They
Hmm.
the way they had Set's wife and his consorts. I'm like, yep, those were all there too. I'm like, cool. Wow, we're
Hmm.
really going for it. So I feel like they were quite at least more so with a lot of other stories, they were quite accurate in what they were saying. They just tried to
Hmm.
find a way to bring everybody together and remove the incest, so I'm not too mad at that part. Like,
Yeah.
do we need the incest? I'm like, on one hand, yeah, we kind of do, but we also kind of don't. I'm really torn.
Right.
I'm like, because everybody's like, look, it's my uncle Set. I'm like, did you know in Egyptian mythology he's also your brother? It's really weird. I like they left that part out. I'm like, oh, did you know that Osiris and Isis are also brother and sister? No, they didn't mention that
Right.
part, did they? Hilarious. Anyway, but so I like it. I actually love the sets. I love
Hmm.
the approach of their kind of animal form that they are as gods being kind of like this almost armor that appears. I actually really like that because it's like, well, we don't want to actually superimpose a bird as their head. That might be a little
Right.
weird. So kind of like having it almost be like an emblem or a coat of arms where like that's your symbol and that's kind of what you become. Let's like God mode.
Hmm. Yeah.
I quite dug that. I thought it was an interesting way of trying to incorporate how they are depicted in mythology whilst integrating it into the story. I
Hmm.
think in the costumes of the gods, I thought that they were great. Sometimes the special effects I thought were really good, like especially the transformations. I thought those were good. Um,
Hmm.
some special effects I did not think were good. Like like when we have was it Hathor? I think it was Hathor. Was it? Yeah, it was Hathor. When she takes off her bracelet and she's pulled through those demons, that part I'm like, no, that
Yes.
like
Yeah,
that.
that didn't work out too well.
No, no, it didn't. I will raise my hand and be
No.
like, no, that wasn't a good one. I
Yeah.
think the most impressive effect for me was I don't know how they did the size thing because all the gods are so much
Yeah.
larger. And I'm like, how did
Yeah.
you do that and yet make it look part of like that one? That one I was really impressed with, and I still don't know how they did it.
Yeah. Yeah. They must have. Well, I don't know. I'm assuming that maybe something similar to what Lord of the Rings did. Maybe
What did Lord of the Rings do?
with the hobbits.
What I I know there was a size thing. I just didn't know how they did it.
Oh, how did they do it? Well, they would use
Damn.
they would use doubles, for Elijah Wood and the Hobbits, and they would also, like when Ian McKellen would be beside them, they would do camera tricks. As far as it was a whole bunch of stuff. It was multiple things that they did to give the illusion that the hobbits were only what were they 4 feet tall or whatever, if
Almost my
that.
height.
Wow, there you go.
Almost
So
there. Almost there.
so I'm assuming that they, but you know what? I could be totally wrong because I don't know for sure. But I'm assuming that maybe it was something similar,
Yeah.
and of course using a lot more computer imagery and stuff too.
Oh yeah, there was definitely a lot of CGI. I mean,
Hmm.
like we said, Excalibur went more practical. This
Right.
went more CGI, where you can like 100% look at almost every set and be like, heck, green screen.
That's not really there. Right. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't think the Nile ever actually looked that blue.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
just
it
don't.
looks like. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So.
But I wasn't mad at it. It kind of it gave me
There's
this
a beauty to it.
it gave me the same feeling I had whenever I would see that first shot in the MCU when we would see Asgard. Like that's how I
Mhm.
felt. Like it's the same
Yeah.
thing for me. And
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much, and I love watching all those archaeology specials talking about Egypt, and they're like,
Mm.
this is a satellite view of what is under the sand. It's like, oh my God, there are all these towns and homes and
Yes,
roads
I
and
love that type of
everything.
stuff too. Yeah.
And it's like, God damn it, but they're all buried under the sand. And so
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, this looks like Egypt if you took the sand away. I
Mm.
mean, a little bit better quality, but
Hmm.
I mean the way that the structure of a lot of the sets, I'm like, it does kind of look like some places that are still left standing. The
Hmm.
columns, all of the hieroglyphs carved into everything. It really did feel like they looked at some of the temples that still exist that have not completely eroded or been demolished by dickheads, and just being like, we want to capture that, but let's make it
Hmm.
really rich and vibrant. Like, how would it look if it was made right now with the best material in the world? It's like,
Right.
and a reason why I can feel like not all of them. I don't actually think they had glass windows anywhere, so
Hmm.
that's a
Hmm.
bit inaccurate.
Hmm.
Like I'm saying, that's the only inaccurate thing the film had. It had glass windows. How dare it? But it was, because if anybody has seen any special where they tried to, where still to this day, people are trying to figure out how they built the pyramids. And
Hmm.
they're like, not just that, but the pyramids would have been absolutely perfect. The dimensions, smoothness, like how? And I'm just like,
Right.
yes. So when I see this film and they're like, absolutely perfect, pristine buildings, and I'm like, that's not completely inaccurate. The only difference
Hmm.
is nobody on set built them. I'm like, somebody in the computer room did. And I'm like, but you did a mighty fine job.
Right.
It's it's not perfect, and the only way that I know that it's filmed in Australia is because of all the Australian actors in it. I I I mean, like, yeah, I'm with you that there was sometimes there was dialogue that I was just like, why?
Cringy.
Why
Yeah.
did you, like, every other time I'm like, yay, I'm loving this movie. I'm having a good time. Everything is so much fun. And then of course somebody says something and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
and Ozzy wrote that. Like, I can just tell because Alex is Australian, and
Hmm.
it was especially when we meet Ra, who is played by Jeffrey Rush, and he says something
Hmm.
about a bird shitting or something like that. He's talking about crap. And I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the god of the gods, the god of creation, who's literally up in space battling a, an entity of chaos, which is again accurate to mythology. That is true. Ra does do that.
Yeah.
They even used one of his alternative names, so obviously they went beyond Google. So good on you there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too.
But I'm just like, no, I don't imagine him saying this. I know we're in
Right.
fantasy land, but come on,
Right. Yeah,
just
exactly.
just have a no, just give me a little bit of him. That, I mean, for someone who's playing Ra, there should just be something where he feels wise, you know?
Right. Well, and the same thing happened with, and I know I've been talking about a few other movies other than these two, but the same thing
Oh
happened
wow.
with King Arthur.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people were put off by how, it's Guy Ritchie directing it, and the Arthurian legend sounded like a Guy Ritchie version of it. You know what I mean? As far as the way that they talk and
Yes.
the dialogue and so forth.
It,
So it's almost the same type of vibe.
it's so weird because yeah, I did not like that film at all. And yet again, it's one of those films because I know that there are films that I have watched, and guaranteed none are coming to me right now,
Hmm.
but films that are like a period piece or they're very
Hmm.
fantasy oriented, and it's like, oh yeah, this is meant to be almost like medieval. but they have a modern, almost urban twist to them. And
Yes.
sometimes they do it, and I'm just like, that was amazing. That's like,
Right.
I'm like, I don't know how you blended the two, but you made it work, and I love it, and I
Yeah.
want to be there.
Hmm.
And then there are some people who do it, and I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And for
Yep.
me, with this one, I went, no.
Yeah. Yep.
And yet, Gods of Egypt, I really enjoy this. I'm not saying it's like, oh my god, it's the greatest film that was ever made. No, I'm not that. I think when I first reviewed it, I gave it like a 3 out of 5 when I first
I was
reviewed
just
it.
about to say, wow, I wonder what you're gonna give it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of probably quality and some aspects of the story, like, for considering Jared Butler is playing Set, and Set is doing a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
the fact that his motivation was literally just, I'm gonna show my dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on. And he only said it once. Like, that was it. That was the only
Yeah.
one little caveat we get to understand why he's doing all this. Because other than that, it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, he's a dick. Like,
Yeah. When they were looking at um, the
obelisk.
yeah, the obelisk, and he was like, "Yeah, and this will be the way that I show to my father," and I'm like, "Really? Come on, dude. Come on." Anyways, and even even that scene, like again, I get it. You want to put a fresh spin on old stories, so that makes sense. But like you said, sometimes movies do it and it works, and then sometimes movies do it and it just takes you out of it. And even in that particular scene that you're talking about, it was just kind of, it just took me out of it, So yeah.
some
Anyways,
scripting definitely could have
yeah.
been tweaked.
If
I
this,
mean, I think
yeah,
Horace and his motivations really work. There is a journey to him because he's
yes,
very much an arrogant character, and then he
hmm,
kind of learns humility, and he kind of is
yeah.
down on mortals, but then working side by side with them, he learns respect for them.
Yeah, and that's a tried and true character arc that
Yeah.
happened, and that worked out fine. But like you said, if the script was better, I could almost guarantee that I would have enjoyed it more.
It was little things between where it was,
Yeah,
where some parts of it felt like an afterthought, like, oh crap, we didn't
yeah,
explain this, let's throw in one line to explain
mm-hmm,
that, whether it be Set going like, oh, show my dad, it's like, okay, he's got daddy issues, great,
mm-hmm,
that's one's
right,
fine. But even then, Jared Butler can give you really dark, like if we think law-abiding citizen, he can go there.
yeah,
And like, Set feels a bit more like a caricature of a bad guy.
yes,
I
yes,
wasn't like, I can look at the heroes and I'm like, yeah, you feel like heroes. You kind of got the buddy comedy thing going, and then I look at Set and I'm
mm-hmm,
like, no, you're just a kind of boring douchebag. Like, are you
yeah,
really? I'm like, are you that strong, or do you just have a big army? Like,
right, yeah,
which is it? Or
right,
what was that one moment of Hathor going, are you really going to do this? She's your wife, and I'm like, wow, you really just randomly threw that in there, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, in
yeah.
Egyptian mythology, these two characters were indeed together. I'm like, but the way you just randomly are like, oh, by the way, he's shacking
Yeah,
up with her, but did you know that she's his wife? I'm like, now that was lazy. No, no, no.
yeah,
So
yes, absolutely.
yeah, I totally agree. I'd probably, if I continued to look at it objectively, and this is why on my channel I only review things that I've seen,
Hmm.
that's my first viewing, or I don't have any memory of when the last time I saw it, because that way I feel like it's all fresh. It's exactly what I'm taking from it. And maybe down the line my
Hmm.
opinion will change, but that's my initial thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
I've seen this a few times, so the more I watch it, I get really into it. I really enjoy it, and any of the flaws don't bother me. Chadwick Boseman, amazing actor, may he rest in peace.
Mm.
But even there was some lines with Toth, and I'm like,
Yeah, I
that
know.
that was a choice.
Yep.
But, now, okay, guaranteed, even as I rewatched it, I'm like, what was that inflection? What, I'm not sure where we were going with okay.
Hmm.
But still, I have so much fun watching it. But the first time I watched it, I gave it a 3, and I feel like if I'm being objective, I have to maintain that 3. If we're going based on like personal enjoyment, it's probably up to a 4 at this point. But
Hmm.
critiquing it as a body of work, I'll stick with a 3.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, if I look at it, if I was to look at it on the personal scale, which of course had a whole bunch of other things going on,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be a little bit lower. But instead, I'm going to be more objective. And again, it's not a horrible film. I did not feel like I was like totally wasting my time watching it. There were enjoyable things in it.
Mm-hmm.
I did enjoy a lot of the cast that's in it. It's a good cast. I just think that the script, was a little whatever, the dialogue a little whatever. But I'd probably give it a. I'd give it a. I'd give it a 2. I'd give it a 2.
I felt
A
like there
2
was
out of 5.
I felt like a 2 was coming. I think that's
Yeah.
very generous based on what you're saying. It's funny that I'm just like, I'm trying to look at it as a body of work. Therefore, my grading will drop. You're like, I'm trying to look at it as a body of work, so my rating.
Well,
What
because
is
I
this
think
episode?
Well, because I think if I was talking to friends, like if I was talking to my buddies and, they wanted to know whether they should watch it or not, and they were trying to get my gut vibe, it would be based on all these years of things that I've heard about it and known about it, and also, the different prejudices I would have against it versus other movies of its ilk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at it as someone who's reviewing it for the sake of this series, and keeping that open mind to go either way on anything I watch, I gotta give it credit. It had moments. It had moments. I could see what they were trying to do, just like with Jupiter Ascending. I see what they were trying to do with this, just like with Jupiter Ascending. So I'll give you some credit for that as well. But again, is it a movie I'm going to watch again? If it's on, I'm not going to necessarily rush to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's going to be a movie I'm going to revisit a lot. And but again, that doesn't mean that it was horrible. It wasn't horrible,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as horrible as I was fearful that it would be. So I'll give it that much credit too.
It
I
wasn't to
was
the point he
really
wanted to set his computer on fire.
exactly. Yes,
that's
exactly.
a good thing. Yeah, I mean, because
Exactly.
I look at like Excalibur and I think this is not casual watching. Like, this is not something I'd be
Right.
like, this is what I want to watch to relax.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
a 2 hour, 20-minute investment. My
Hmm.
relaxation periods only go beyond that if it's like TV binging, because
Yes.
no, unless it's like a film that I really like that I can just watch and like switch off the brain, which I feel like Gods of Egypt is. It's very much
Hmm.
a eh, I have nothing to do today. I'm gonna watch something. I'm gonna make some popcorn, grab myself some soda,
Yeah.
and chill on the couch and watch this movie. It's that kind of a
Right.
film. And
Yep.
I do feel like there were some reviews that I saw where they looked at this film and went, wow, this is not a blockbuster. This is not a this. I'm like, well, could you stop telling me like everything that you believe that it was meant to be and just tell me what it
Hmm.
is?
Right.
Like just because it maybe came out as a blockbuster, which is anything that really comes out of the cinema, does not necessarily mean that it's one of those films we're going to be like, and that this was a masterpiece. This is, oh my God, it's Titanic, it's Avatar. What are we going to do? Sometimes things get a big release, but their ultimate design is
Right.
just to be kind of senseless entertainment. And while
Yeah.
I appreciate the kind of detail in the characters that they tried to stick with mythology, I like that even in the costumes they tried to represent the like kind of like uh iconography of a lot of these characters, whether it be, headpieces and things like that. They're things that you would see on temple walls that are like specific to these characters, and they tried to put it into the costuming. I do
Hmm.
appreciate that, but at the same
Yeah.
time, as much as I love that, and I think that's really beautiful to really try and bring these to life and be like, yeah, why this is in this, because this is actually
Hmm.
part of, almost the same as having like a coat of arms. But at the same time, I could probably understand people who would look at this and be like, would we rather have an accurate headpiece or an Egyptian actor? Tough, tough call. To which I'd look at it that way and I'd be like, I know which one I would pick. Because I
Right.
because I feel that way sometimes, when they cast someone who's not Australian to play an Australian, and I can
Hmm.
I can always tell if they're not Australian because they sound so overly stereotypical. And I'm like, did you actually go to the writers and say, can you throw in every stereotypical Aussie phrase for me to say, please? Like, what the fuck is this shit? But when you see an Australian do it, you know that there's love there. And that was like my one positive thing like about Mortal Kombat. And I'm like, was this dude freaking stereotypical as hell? I'm like, yeah, but he's actually an Aussie, so he was doing it correctly. Like he was using things in the right context. The things I was just like, I've met these people. I know these
Hmm.
people. And my mom and I were genuinely laughing our asses off at him, like, yes, yes, yes. But yeah, and then other times I look at people and I'm like, no, no, no. So I get it. I get it. So
Hmm.
to any person who hated this because it was whitewashing and all that stuff, yeah, that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It is
got
what
it.
it is.
But if there are bird lovers out there who are like, you did not accurately depict birds, well, then you're just fucking dumb. Get off my channel. What? I don't know.
Where can you go after that? You pretty much, you pretty much put yourself in a corner there, girl.
I feel like I need Patrick Swayze. Don't put Ashley in the corner.
Good one. That was good.
Again. I think that despite us really having such polar opinions on I mean, not drastically polar
Yeah.
opinions, but quite different opinions
Yeah.
on these films. This is probably, I think, the funnest episode we've done, and
Yeah.
the most freaking bonkers.
Yeah. We went to a lot of places.
We
We
did.
went to a lot of places and we did not wear our seatbelts. So I appreciate that. I really do.
I think that this episode has really solidified for moi that bringing you on board was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Oh, geez. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you.
I
No,
know.
no, but this is a great, it's a great exercise too, as far as getting a different opinion on movies of similar themes. And I think that this was a great episode. It's funny because when we were choosing these movies, and I know we went through a whole list of options.
Not as long as the list for aliens. That was like fucking
True.
War and Peace of lists
Yes,
in the
yes.
original
But
Russian.
yes. But when we finally came up with this, as soon as you said, yeah, Gods of Egypt for sure. And I was just like, oh my gosh, we couldn't be further, apart on the spectrum. But that's what makes it fun though. It really does, seriously. And this is really fun to do. So I enjoy it.
I don't know. Is Gods of Egypt that far apart from Excalibur compared to Jupiter
Yes.
ascending meets Under the Skin?
Okay. Well, I guess what I mean is that you for these two movies, you've
Mhm.
got what, 3 decades in between them.
Okay.
So totally different way that they approached as far as practical and
True.
super CGI.
Mm-hmm.
One is super fantastical. The other one is a little bit more, reality fantastical.
Grounded.
I know that's not a word. Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean is that they're very similar, as far as telling these mythology tales, but
Mm.
they approached them totally different. That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
I honestly, I don't think that there is like, I think you can go grounded with the legend of King Arthur, because I mean there are still so many people who, and you can't really say for sure if
Mhm.
there's not aspects of it that are real. Um
Right.
maybe not necessarily, like I magically made you look like somebody else so you could go and sexually assault someone. I don't think that happened.
Right.
But the sexual assault part, yeah, I could see that. Wartime
Yeah.
shit went down. Uh,
Yeah.
battle, claiming of lands, trying to take thrones, things like that. And
Hmm.
and even the character of Merlin, the magical part, not necessarily I'm saying that's true, but throughout history there have been royalty who had their advisors, and a lot of them were
Yeah.
mystics. So
Yeah.
it's very possible to be like, yeah, maybe there's someone in ancient times who had a druid who was kind of their advisor. There's
Hmm.
nothing unrealistic about that. There's a lot of that
Right.
that could very well have happened. There are still people who
Hmm.
100% believe that King Arthur was a real person. Maybe he
Hmm.
was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't around. I
Right.
cannot say one way or another. Egyptian mythology, on the other hand, could some of these people be based on real people? Possibly.
Hmm.
Do I think in the manner of which they are depicted in mythology? No. No,
Right.
not. And I don't think that there is somebody who has the head of a jackal who's in
I hope
charge of
not.
the
Yeah.
afterlife. I don't think that there's a bird person who, weighs your heart against a feather. Personally, I think we're all fucked if that's what happens when we die. You could be fucking Mother Teresa. It doesn't matter. I think you are fucked. According to that method, it's like,
Good point.
I mean, I'm sorry. I know that the whole thing is meant to say like it weighs purity.
Hmm.
I don't care. It's not a magical scale. It's still a scale.
Right.
Nothing is gonna be lighter than a fucking feather. We are all fucked. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
maybe if it was like a balloon shaped like a heart, but I don't know how you'd.
Okay.
I don't know
All
how you'd get
right.
that into the
We're doing
afterlife.
balloon tricks now. Come on.
I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I have lost my mind.
You're
I have
off the rails.
actually, that's really ridiculous. I don't think I ever had any sanity to begin with. I think I'm full of shit. But
Okay.
but I think that that is a good place to end it before things
Okay.
really get crazy. Because you think they're crazy
Right.
now, oh, you got no idea what could happen. Raise the
Right.
roof, raise the roof. Oh Lord. But
Yeah.
that being said, if you have seen either of these films, then be sure to comment down below. Tell us what you
Yes.
think about them. Do you like either of them? Do you hate either of them? Have you just never freaking heard of any of them and not seen any of them? Whichever it is, let us know. And
Absolutely.
like I also say, if you are not following or subscribed to now more than ever, because I was going to say this the other week when we were going to do a podcast the other week, and then we didn't because life.
Life.
Now more than ever, if you were once following the NightWatch Zone, go follow again, because YouTube was a dick. You know what?
Yes, pretty much.
Not even dick. YouTube was a cunt. That is the reality. And poor
Mm.
Knight here lost his channel, and it was undoubtedly a blow to this lovely man. And the fans of his channel were not thrilled and tried to help, bless their hearts, but there wasn't really anything they can do. And he unfortunately had to bite the bullet and start from the ground up.
Yes.
So if you were following that channel and have not resubscribed to his new channel, definitely go and do that. There'll be links in the description box and at the end of this video. I encourage you to do that. And if you weren't subscribed in the first place, well, you can
Get
just
over there.
Yeah, exactly. You can just do that now. And there will also be links to his social media so that you can follow him on all the places. All the places. They're all gonna be down there.
Indeed.
And then you can just click on them, and then you can find out the next time that he makes a video over on his channel that you can support to show that he will not be beaten.
Wow, you're really banging that.
I know, and even though I meant what I said, something about my delivery did not seem sincere, but I meant it.
I know you mean it.
I also noticed I banged my desk so much my camera has shifted.
I know. It's like as you're doing that, the camera's like, I'm like, wait a minute.
I can't reach it because then I'll knock my mic. But whoopsie. Yeah. But anyway, Night, thank you once again for a terrific episode, and I cannot wait for the next one, whatever it will be.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. This is fun to do. You know, I really enjoy it, and it's like I said, it's taking me out of the comfort zone a little bit. And that's all right. I can deal with that.
It's what we gotta do. It's far better to be taken out of your comfort zone when it comes to films instead of sex.
Jeez.
Was that too much? Was that too much?
You know, you went there. It's like you're going places that I'm not even expecting. And that's fun. That's what makes this fun.
Good Lord. Well, that's it for this episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, whatever. And we will catch you in the next episodes. Until then, bye.
Adios.